Welcome to the show. Hi, I'm Randy Jeffers, and we are live from the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Well, we have a really special guest all the way from Alexandria, Virginia. We have Barry Meuse with us. Barry Meuse, retired colonel, right, from the Air Force.
That's right, Randy, and a pleasure to be with you today.
Absolutely. Well, welcome to the show, and you have so many exciting things going on in your life. I don't know how you can just stand yourself, but tell us just a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Well, I spent a wonderful life in the Air Force as an Air Force fighter pilot, saw combat time. I concluded my Air Force life with a tour at the Pentagon where I helped write defense policy, national security policy, and Air Force strategy in the plan section of the Pentagon. I was privileged to also then be the director of air operations for the National Guard, and was forced to go around to 54 states and territories, Randy, and fly every airplane in the fleet.
Oh, my goodness. They actually made you do that, huh?
It was a great pleasure. National Guardsmen were just wonderful people, and it was a great part of my life.
Well, I know you have some other things we want to talk about that are really exciting, but I just have to ask you, one of my favorite movies is that Top Gun movie, and I mean, what's it like to be a fighter pilot? That's got to be one of the greatest thrills in the world, huh?
Well, it's really exciting, and I think a lot. I think often that it's like skating. It's like a hockey player. It's like a long distance bike rider. You don't even know that you're on the bike. You don't even know that you're skating because you just are with the airplane.
Yeah.
And so it's a wonderful combination of technology and art. It's a real thrill, and of course, being in the third dimension, looking over God's green earth, it's very special, very special.
What's the most special plane that you've flown?
Well, every fighter pilot's in love with their airplane. I guess you probably know that we're kind of that way, and the F-4 is will still be in my mind the best airplane ever. And they make new ones. They have better technology, that's for sure. But this was an awesome airplane, and it would do everything that you asked it to do and a little bit more.
Wow. So what years did you start flying?
I started flying 1963, and I flew through 1986 here in Washington, D.C., going around traveling with visiting the Guard units.
My goodness, what a long career, yeah. Well, very, very exciting. So I'm quite sure that with all that experience in the military, you have a real soft spot in your heart for veterans and all the people that served with you, and that's got to be just something that is with you all the time, right?
But the veterans were treated, as you probably know, kind of poorly in the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
If them gave heroic service and at great sacrifice, and came home to abuse. And now we're recognizing those veterans, those Vietnam veterans, and all of our veterans for the great service that they are giving. After I retired, I started my own business, and I was a service contractor in working in aerospace and defense. And I worked in veteran issues, and at one point I was vice president of a company called VetsPAC, which is a political action committee for veterans issues.
Wow.
And we worked to help get veterans the kind of benefits they need. There was just a lot of loopholes in the law, and we were able to close many of them for the veterans. And so it's always got a soft spot in my heart for veterans.
Do you see things are they getting better now? Do you see any improvement?
We're taking care of what we didn't take care of before were the families. So people would leave my air base and go off to combat, and they would maybe not, some of them would not come back. And we had such basic issues as how do we handle the families, and where do they live, and how do we help them move? and what are the benefits, so that they're not really out on the street. So a lot of those benefits have been, all those things have been cleaned up. We take wonderful care of the families now, so that's really good.
That's wonderful. You know, I graduated from high school in 1970, and I remember soldiers would be coming back, and I mean that was such a terrible time for the military people, and you know, I was recently on a flight, and there was a military member on the flight, and the crew asked everybody to wait to let the military person off, and everybody stood and gave them a standing ovation and clapped for them, and it's like a whole different world now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were divided then, and
Yeah.
the draft situation was very difficult for a lot of families.
Yeah.
A lot of families resented it. Now we're draft free. We're a volunteer force. People are there because they want to be there, because it provides some opportunities for them they wouldn't have otherwise. And young men grow up to be adults and great citizens of this country by this experience forged in combat.
Absolutely. Well, you know, those that served, especially in war duty, went through tremendous pain and turmoil, and that's lasting in many cases. And I know we want to talk a little bit about that. But you're the executive director of an organization called Imagine Now. Is that right?
That's right. Imagine Now, and now is, it has a bifurcated meaning. So it's now. Let's do it now. Let's help them now, and it also stands for nurturing our warriors.
Wow.
And these are the veterans, the people coming back, needing help. The VA does what it can and renders, in many cases, really good service. But it's really not enough. And the big wound of our time is the brain injury, the traumatic brain injury. And concussion has several names. But Imagine Now is focused on diagnosing and treating traumatic brain injury in veterans.
Wow. How prevalent are brain injuries?
Well, there are 21 million veterans living today.
Wow.
And the VA believes that there are about 1 million with diagnosed traumatic brain injury and PTSD.
Wow.
But you really can't go to a reunion of Vietnam veterans without seeing that there's a much broader impact. There's more than 800,000. There's more than 1 million veterans suffering from traumatic brain injury. But we'll take those numbers. That's a big set of numbers, and we got to treat those people.
Yeah. So how do we do that?
Well, the therapy there are several therapies that are out there that people use, but in my research, we've found that hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a proven, safe, and effective treatment for traumatic brain injury. So there's traumatic brain injury. Just kind of get through the terms here. There's post-traumatic stress. There's post-concussion syndrome. There's prolonged post-concussion syndrome. They are all the same. They are all the same injury. This is a concussion. This means that the brain tissue is damaged or injured. It means that the brain has swelling. It means that because of the swelling, you have pain. You have these consistent, persistent headaches that really don't go away.
Wow.
And the vascular system is compromised. The nerves are squeezed by the swollen tissue, just as if you twisted an ankle or sprained a knee. You know, at the moment it happens, it bothers you, but it's the next day when the swelling occurs that the pain is really onset. So all of these are different labels for concussion, and what we're found in the research is that hyperbaric oxygen therapy, the problem is hypoxic tissue. So the tissue doesn't have enough oxygen. The way to handle that is give it more oxygen. So that's the oxygen part of hyperbaric. And we've also found that pressure is equal component to the oxygen. So the pressure reduces swelling. When it reduces swelling, it also has an angiogenesis property. That is, it'll make new blood vessels where the injury is, so it'll serve that tissue better. It generates 8 times normal stem cells at the point of injury. So your body, you skin your knee, you're a youngster, you skin your knee out on the playground, and you come in, and the skin starts to reform over the bruise of the skinned area. That's your body generating stem cells to grow new tissue.
Right.
So at oxygen therapy, we found that the body generates 8 times as many stem cells.
More. Wow. That's dramatic.
That is dramatic, and so it promotes healing.
Uh-huh.
There are 8,101 genes in the body, and the pressure, we believe it's the pressure, upregulates and downregulates those 8,100 genes. And some of those genes are anti-edema, they're anti-inflammatory, and so it upregulates those genes. And some of those genes are inflammatory, and it downregulates those genes.
Wow.
So it has a great effect on the body. Let me talk just briefly about the oxygen. We have a lot of people talk about it, and the doctors say, well, if I put a mask on and I have 100% oxygen, I have 100% oxygen. That's yes and no. You put it into a pressure situation and increase the atmospheric pressure to 1.3 or 1.5 or 2.0 atmospheres, and you actually get more oxygen into the blood than 100%. So if you think of, I had a doctor explain this to me once, that the platelets arrive at the lung heart interface, and the platelets pick up little red blood cells like buses, and they travel it around the vascular system and drop off oxygen at the cell level. When you have pressure and 100% oxygen, you actually dissolve some of the oxygen molecules into the plasma without platelets. So without platelets, the oxygen molecule is very small, and it will get into certain of the very small capillaries that just the platelets would never get to. And the science says that it's about 15% more oxygen in the plasma than is carried by the platelets in the blood under hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So it gets everywhere.
Yeah, that's dramatic too. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, it's.
So it saturates, when you have an injury, your body's crying out for nutrients and oxygen, and you get both of those with hyperbaric oxygen. The other feature that it has, it's an anti-inflammatory, I believe I mentioned that. The other thing it's got an antibiotic impact.
Really? Wow.
So there's aerobic and anaerobic bacteria. The aerobic bacteria lives in oxygen. The anaerobic lives without oxygen. So in the presence of oxygen, it dies. So if you have anaerobic bacteria in your body, hyperbaric oxygen therapy will act as an antibiotic and kill it, and without anything other than the oxygen.
Now, Barry, you're talking about hyperbaric therapy. Are we talking about hyperbaric chambers? I know we've heard that word, and for those of us that don't have the medical background that you have, explain to us what at the very beginning what is hyperbaric therapy?
Well, hyperbaric oxygen is a treatment of the whole body in a chamber.
Uh-huh.
It's enclosed. Many of them now have full plexiglass, very space age types of chambers. They close the chamber, and increase the pressure. And you're in an environment either with 100% oxygen in the chamber, or you have a mask or hood and you're intaking 100% oxygen.
Wow.
Typically, the traumatic brain injury or concussion treatment is 1.5 atmospheres. So you increase the pressure to 1.5 atmosphere, and you'll be there for an hour, and then you'll exit the chamber. People who go in the chamber nowadays, generally it's not claustrophobic. You can read in the chamber and watch a little TV or video in the chamber. It has a speaker system so that you can talk to a loved one outside the chamber if you want to. Technician is with you at all times, so watching you make sure everything is okay. It's a great experience. You will not feel the pressure. So you go into the chamber and you can't feel the 1.5 or the 2.0 pressure on your body, but it's having an impact on all of your organs.
So you feel just normal when you're in there, just like you would.
Completely normal.
Wow.
Completely normal.
Now, is this this chamber that you're talking about, the hyperbaric chamber, is that something that's similar to what divers would do, that that had the bends, or we've all probably heard of that. Is it something similar to that?
Well, it's exactly what is used to treat the bends, and that's the classic use of the hyperbaric chamber.
Okay.
Is for somebody with the bends. So to talk about the bends for a minute, this is really interesting because people descend to depth and rise too quickly. So as they descend to depth, some of the nitrogen in their blood goes into solution into the tissue. So as you rise and come back to the surface, you want that nitrogen to come back out of the tissue, go back into the bloodstream in a normal way.
Right.
If you rise too quickly, that nitrogen will be left behind in the tissue, and you'll get the bends with these nitrogen bubbles are in your joints and places they shouldn't be, including the vascular system. And I've seen photos of people with the bends, and you can see bubbles in their eyes.
Wow.
So the notion of bubbles, gas bubbles in the vascular system or in your body is, it's for real. Now the way this concussion ties into decompression illness is that a lot of the concussion that our veterans, that our servicemen are getting and the veterans experience is coming from explosive blast. So think of the diver going down. Every 33 feet is an atmosphere. So a diver goes down to 33 feet, and that diver's at 2 atmospheres. And he goes another 33 feet to 66 feet. These are not unusual numbers.
Uh-huh.
Then that person's at 3 atmospheres. So that person's got to come back up to 1 atmosphere slowly. Now what we're found is that explosive blasts, going back centuries, after gunpowder was invented and we've had artillery on the field, that there were a number of people laying on the ground after artillery barrages who were not physically injured on the outside, but they were traumatized and unconscious. Many of them never recovered. Their normal life, they could get up and walk around, but they didn't know who they were. They obviously had something happen to them. The first time that was noted in a diary was in the 7 Years' War in 1761 in Europe. Was noted again in the Civil War. And in 1915, the Brits were in World War I in France. And they had, of course, that was trench warfare, a lot of artillery barrages going back and forth. And a number of soldiers were found on the ground, not with a physical exterior wound, but clearly with a mental problem, because some of them would get up and not know their name or be able to talk. So the Brits call that shell shock.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a band that they would pin to a wounded soldier's sleeve with a W on it to indicate the wounded. so they could find their way to the aid station and back home.
Yeah.
And if you had the shell shock, you were wounded. You had a medical condition, and they gave you a W, and you went back home. And the next year, in 1915, at the Battle of the Somme, 40% of the casualties were shell shock. And the British leadership realized they couldn't sustain an army by sending 40% of their soldiers back home.
Right. Yeah.
So they reclassified it to a psychological.
Oh no.
So we have lived 100 years. We have lived 100 years with people with a medical condition classified as a psychological condition. I have a very good friend of mine who's a physiologist, and we were talking, what happened to these people? What happened to these, in our case, great uncles, grandfathers, who went off to war at 17 or 18, went into World War I, got shell shocked, and what happened to them? And many of them wound up in institutions in France. And my compadre, who's researched this, went into an insane asylum in France in 1960, and he found World War I veterans there, so shell shock. So they went into the war to defend their country. They had shell shock. They spent the rest of their life institutionalized somewhere, never had a family, never saw their own family again, never had children, so on. So it's a devastating injury, and I'm really pleased that we're able to put Imagine Now together and start treating it for the current era veterans and bring them back to a normal life.
Well, Barry, I know you're part of a new sort of a worldwide center of hyperbaric treatment, and that's that you're developing in Las Vegas, in our town here, along with a couple of partners. One of your partners is a good mutual friend we have, Janet Franco. Tell us about what you're planning on developing here.
Well, we're looking at Las Vegas is really the entertainment center of the United States, of course. Mm-hmm. Everybody can get there quickly and relatively inexpensively. Fortunately, housing and the hotels are not expensive, food's not expensive, and we think that Las Vegas is the natural place to set up several clinics to treat veterans with traumatic brain injury and PTSD and concussion and all the variants. So Janet Franco is an extraordinary human being. Yes. I met her a couple of years ago, and you just have to thank the heavens for bringing this person into my life and the life of the veterans. She's been toiling at it for 12 years. We're partners in this. We formed Imagine Now together, and she's got a great group of volunteers on the ground in Las Vegas. We want to open a couple of clinics, one for veterans. Mm-hmm. They have unique problems, and they need special attention. There's a need for a clinic there to treat concussion in hockey players. And I'm thinking I think the professional hockey league and the professional football players can pretty much take care of themselves with this kind of treatment. But high school hockey players and football players and college players need this treatment. And if you treat it acutely, it's only three or four treatments. And you can be back to normal.
With how? Say that again. How many treatments?
Maybe 4 treatments.
Wow.
We have a surgeon, hyperbaric doctor, physician out of Chicago, and she's treating college and high school young ladies and men with concussion, and she's treating it acutely. Mm-hmm. So, Susie comes home. She got hit in the head. She's not herself. Her mom knows that right away. They call the doc. They get her in, get a treatment that night. Say that's Wednesday. Another one Thursday, another one Friday. And they're all done. Saturday, that child is back to normal.
My goodness. Wow.
Which is astonishing because the concussion, the mild concussion, Randy, resolves itself over time. You get a light knock on the head. It's a light concussion. your body's immune system is going to attack that. It's going to reduce swelling and it's going to heal itself. You have moderate to severe concussion. The science says that'll never heal. We had a veteran who was in the field in 1967 in the Army. He had explosive blast in his location. He spent over 2 years in a hospital recovering from physical wounds, but he also had concussion. And when he came home, they couldn't keep him in the Army because he was so difficult. He said that he could always get a job, but he could never keep a job because he had so much rage and so much anger and so illogical an approach to work. His kids left the house as soon as they could. At any rate, 44 years later, I meet this man, John, and he gets treated in a hyperbaric setting in San Francisco by, turns out, one of my good friends. And John completely changed his life. So his headaches, now 44 years of headaches, 44 years of insomnia in varying degrees,
Wow.
44 years of loss of short-term memory. He couldn't have a conversation like you and I are having because he can't remember what he just said, what you just said. Anxiety, depression, most of that masked by, or trying to be masked by pharmaceuticals. So John today is back to who he used to be.
Wow.
He's back to the 17-year-old kid he once was. But Randy, the thing that it's extraordinary that he got treatment and he's fine. That's really great. But the thing that really connects us is that his wife stood by him all those years of abuse. And I asked him, I saw him last year, and he does come to speak at some of our social functions we have. And for the first time, I said, John, so how are your kids? What's going on in your family? And he teared up. He almost started crying. He's a stoic. And he said, well, Barry, my son's 54, my daughter's 52. I'm just beginning to get to know them. They kept away from me because I was abusive and angry, and they wouldn't let me be near my grandkids. And now today I'm meeting my grandkids. I'm connecting to my son and daughter. So here's a family that was divided, broken up, split, and all of the problems that brings into society. So you heal these families, heal the veteran, you heal the family. You heal the family, man, that's the underpinning of this society.
You're right.
So it's a great, it's great to see that happen, and that's we want to do more Johns.
It's the ripple effect, you throw the little rock out in the middle of the pond and the ripples out. It's the same way. I mean, I can't imagine how many people are affected by just one person having that sort of a trauma in their life.
Yeah, this goes everywhere. All the people he met during his life, all his relatives, all his extended family, all his comrades. Now he can get together with his buddies from the 1967 experience in Vietnam and actually have a good experience with them.
What are some of the other disorders or health issues that can be treated?
Well, hyperbaric is proof of 13 different conditions. Most of them are in extremis. So, of course, one of them is decompression illness, which can kill you. Necrotizing fasciitis, which is that terrible bacteria that can get on your skin, and in a matter of days, you're amputating limbs. Thermal burns, of course, gas poisoning, and probably the big one is diabetic foot wounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if you know anybody with diabetes, the one of the things that happens is they get their feet swell, their legs swell, their feet swell, their circulation gets bad, and then it gets worse, and pretty soon they can't feel the bottom of their feet. And they can't feel the bottom of the feet, then they're not driving, they're not walking, certainly not exercising, and they can't see the bottom of their feet, and they develop these essentially bed sores, and they look like apple cores. So you got a little blister on the bottom of the foot, and then that goes right into the foot and goes right up to the bone. So hyperbaric oxygen therapy is indicated and paid for by insurance companies for people with diabetic foot wounds.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
Oh well, it's a fabulous therapy, and I've seen diabetic foot wounds. I've seen diabetic foot wounds heal from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll look at the bottom of a foot, and it's got a terrible looking sore all the way in the bottom of the foot. And with hyperbaric treatment, you'll see that thing heal all the way back out, to the bottom of the foot.
Whoops! I think we have a little beep there. There we go.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
So the thing is that hyperbaric therapy, the option to hyperbaric therapy for diabetic foot wounds is amputation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a very good friend and Navy captain. He retired. I worked with him a little bit. I saw him after we both retired. He was very heavy. He had diabetes. I said, well, what's the prognosis? And he said, well, my doctor says in 5 years, I'll wind up in a hospital bed blind.
Wow.
And I won't have my legs. So what happens to them is they get these foot sores, diabetic foot wounds, and the podiatrists are the amputees, and they start with the toes and they keep working forward. And if you get hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment, you can stop it. You're not going to cure the diabetes, but you can cure the wound. So let's take all those things. So you've got thermal burns that it's indicated for. You've got diabetic foot wounds it's indicated for. Necrotizing fasciitis, that skin disease, that's a wound. The thermal burn is a wound. The foot wound is obviously a wound. All of these wounds are on the outside, and the diabetic foot wound is also inside. So what we're trying to do is get the FDA to clear hyperbaric oxygen therapy to repair the internal wound of the brain, the brain tissue. But right now, it's not cleared for that, so it's not reimbursed. So we do that through donations as an off-label treatment.
I see. Now, let me ask you about this, because I know part of the purpose of Imagine Now is to, because it's a charity, a 501c3 charity, and the purpose is to provide some of these services for veterans that can afford it, right?
That's right.
Now, how expensive, though, is...
Yeah, for everybody who can't afford it.
Yeah. So how expensive is the treatment if you had to pay for it? Is it really expensive?
Well, the price is going to be between $150 to $250 a treatment.
Okay.
And depending on where you go and how that goes,
Uh-huh.
you need 4 treatments. If you're treating concussion acutely, it'll be done in 4.
Wow.
If you're a veteran and you have severe concussion, severe TBI, then you're probably looking at 60 to 80 dives in the range of $200. It's say average price.
Now you say dives. That a dive is a treatment? Is one treatment?
Treatment is one dive. So we're going to spend 1 hour in there, thereabouts. That's called a dive. You're going to go down to pressure, and then you're going to come back up slowly. So that's a dive, and it's going to be 60 to 80 dives. And that's going to be in the vicinity of $15,000 or $16,000.
So let me ask you this. I'm just curious. If you were a scuba diver, could you accomplish the same thing by diving down and then, or are they two different things?
A lot as a scuba diver.
Yeah. In
terms of wellness and good health. And I think when you look at the scuba, if you look at scuba diving populations, or you go on a scuba dive and you look around you at people who do this, weekly or monthly, you're going to find some really healthy looking people because, they're going to go down, they're going to get the blood moving under pressure. 100% oxygen is the missing component, but they will have oxygen or a mixture with them. So it's great therapy, scuba diving. Absolutely.
So you mentioned some of them, they might have 50, 60, 70, 80 treatments, huh? Yeah,
and that'd be one a day. Some can do 2 a day, so it's going to take 90 days, 100 days to go through it.
Wow.
And for the veterans they do 40, and then they take a break, and then they do 40 more. Okay. And it's important for veterans, they're feeling so good after 40, they don't want to come back.
Yeah.
You've got to get them back in order for this therapy to hold and be effective long term.
So for someone that would be needing 40 plus 40, what kind of condition would they have for that would require?
Well, that'd be a moderate to severe traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
And we do the diagnostics on that. These are people with loss of short-term memory, so they're going to have trouble talking. They're going to have trouble with emotional control. They're going to have rage. They're going to have, every one of them will have a headache. Every one of them will be insomniac of some sort, and many of them will be have some addiction issues to deal with because they're trying to relieve that pain.
Now, for someone that has what they used to call shell shock, for instance, if we found someone like that, does it matter how long they've had that condition? Can we still help them after a long period of time?
44 years is not too long.
Wow.
In that Army veteran. And he was a mess in 2011 before he took his treatment. He was a mess.
But
and
probably...
Yes, the loss of short-term memory is really tough. It's persistent headache. You've got a sensitivity to light and sound, and get rid of that. You can't sleep at night without drugs. It's depression, anxiety.
Oh, I can imagine.
Emotional. The hypothalamus is in the center of your head. It's connected to the top of your spinal column, and it, like the frontal lobe, have affective domain responsibilities. It turns the neurons from the brain into hormones in the body, in the endocrine system. So when you have explosive blast and you move that gelatinous material called the brain around, some of it's going to bounce off the front lobe and damage itself, and some of that may damage the hypothalamus. So this treatment, that will remain swollen and hypoxic until you treat it.
Let me ask you this. For relatively healthy people, I consider myself extremely healthy. I don't have any aches or pains, and, I eat a good diet and so forth. But, every now and then I'll walk into a room and I'll forget what I came in there for. I went in there to do something really specific. And, I think a lot of people have that happen to them. For someone just, in my situation, would a dive be helpful?
The dive is a tremendous wellness program. So you have good nutrition, you exercise, but you're an active man. You're working and meeting people. You're not just taking care of yourself every day. You're taking care of other people. You're doing other things. And a periodic dive, periodic hyperbaric treatment is wonderful for wellness because it'll flush all the blood up to the skin. It'll go to every organ in your body.
Wow.
My favorite story is the 3 Navy chiefs that I met the first time I went into a chamber, and I saw these 3 fellows sitting at the console waiting for a woman to come in to use the chamber, and they looked like they were babies. They looked like they're 40, they're 38, they're 36. Skin that didn't have a wrinkle, all ruddy colored, hands had good color. Turns out these were all the retired Navy chiefs. They were divers, and they were hyperbaric most of their life. And they were all 65, 64, 66 years old. And they looked extraordinarily youthful. So as a wellness treatment, it's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Hard to beat.
Wow.
So people take plastic surgery, they do face peels and so on. This will heal quickly.
I can't wait till you get open. I'm going to be one of the first patients there. I want to. Do you call the people patients or clients? What would you call them?
They're patients.
Patients.
This is a medical treatment. It's overseen by a physician. Oxygen is a drug. It's controlled, so it's prescribed by the physician. So, yeah, there is a wellness component. And there is the very sick component, the diabetic foot wound. That's very serious stuff. Necrotizing fasciitis, decompression, all those are very serious things. But up at the upper level for wellness, it's hard to beat.
So you mentioned it takes a prescription then, so a doctor has to actually write a prescription for treatment.
That's right.
Okay. Are there any problems getting that done, or?
Normally not. The doctor wants to see you and have a consult, make sure that you're healthy. And there are very few limits to using the chamber, health-wise, and so you want your ears to be clear, just like you would get on an airplane. You'd like your ears to clear so that you don't have trouble going up and down pressure. And certain cardiac conditions are not indicated, and the reason they're not indicated is because you're in the chamber, and it's going to take a couple of minutes to get you back to the service and open the door and get you out. So it's more about having an untoward cardiac event than having in any way the hyperbaric oxygen treatment affect your heart adversely. It affects the heart in a positive.
If somebody's on a pacemaker, for instance, would they be able to go into a chamber?
Pacemaker's not one of those things that you can't use the chamber.
Okay.
And that's once again about the risk. You have a pacemaker, you don't have a fully functioning cardiac condition.
Yeah.
You may need treatment. If you need attention, you want to be able to get to it right away.
Well, Barry, this is so exciting. What an exciting venture, and we're just about out of time, but what do you see happening over the next 2 or 3, 4 years with this new venture?
Well, we're going to open these chambers in Las Vegas, and we want to cookie cutter them around the United States, where we already have several clinics out there that we want to be affiliated with and help them become more robust. There's a natural marriage between hyperbaric oxygen therapy and stem cells, for example. So we want to bring stem cells into every one of these clinics, as well as neurofeedback. Neurofeedback is terrific for treating autism and ADHD and giving people better brain health. So that's our vision, is to go across the United States, bring this to every veteran who needs it, every contact sport athlete who needs it, every battered women who need it, and there is nobody out there with a count of how many battered women there are.
Yeah.
And I want to open Janet and I want to open a very special place here, a pediatric unit.
I was just going to ask you about kids. Yeah, you mentioned autism, and so it's okay for kids. It's safe. The safe treatment.
It's very good for children. It's good for infants.
Yeah.
The veterinarians have been using this on small animals for many years, with great results for healing. And as you probably know from other discussions, the near-drowned babies are a very special case.
Yeah.
And we want to set up a pediatric unit here to treat those babies.
Well, I wish we had more time. Boy, this hour's gone fast, but we'll have you back once you get opened, and maybe we can talk maybe a little bit before your grand opening so we can announce that and let everybody know about it. But Barry, thanks so much for being with us and sharing what an amazing technology. Any last words of wisdom for everybody?
Well, let's see. I think the best thing that people can do is to watch you every week.
That's good.
What you say.
That's the number one answer, by the way. That's the number one answer, yeah.
Look for us in Las Vegas and around the country. Look for Imagine Now. You go to Imagine Now, Help Warriors Now.
HelpWarriorsNow.com.
.org.
Oh, .org. Okay.
Look at our website, and if you have the impulse, push that button, make a donation. That'd be great.
Okay, helpwarriorsnow.org.
Right.
Okay. Well, Barry, thanks again. What an honor to just know you and to have you on the show. So thanks so much, and we'll look forward to some great times ahead. So
you're the best, and to all your crew there, that put you on the air. This is a wonderful thing, and it's great for Imagine Now. And look forward to other conversations with you.
Thanks so much. And we'll see you next week. Same time, same station. Bye-bye, everybody.
It's awesome. Okay.
Bye-bye.